Hello everybody, Andrew Breitbart just died, and I want to make a video about what Andrew stood for, which is media bias. I want to do so at the example of Shirley Sherrod, who was a high-ranking member of the Department of Agriculture and who got fired after Andrew promoted a video on which she stated things that could be construed as racism.
He took a long time talking, but he was trying to show me he was superior to me. I knew what he was doing, but he had to come to me for help. What he didn't know, while he was taking all that time trying to show me he was superior to me, was I was trying to decide just how much help I was going to give him. I was struggling with the fact that so many black people have lost their farmland, and here I was faced with having to have a white person save their land. So I didn't give him the full force of what I could do. I did enough so that when I assumed the Department of Agriculture had sent him to me, either that or the Georgia Department of Agriculture, and he needed to go back and report that I did try to help. So I took him to a white lawyer that had attended some of the training that we had provided, because Chapter 12 bankruptcy had just been enacted for the family farmer. So I figured if I take him to one of them, that his own kind would take care of him. That's when it was revealed to me that it's about poor versus those who have. And not so much about white. It is about white and black, but it's not, it opened my eyes, because I took him to one of his own.
Is Shirley Sherrod a racist? I think so. Even though Andrew's detractors obviously think not. How is that? For me, a racist is someone who identifies with his race, or more generally who believes that to racists, that is, people defined by skin colors, groups of people defined by skin color, are subject to words like guilt or redemption, as if they were somehow one moral unit, like an individual. Yeah, an individual can have debt. An individual can be guilty. A group of people cannot be guilty of anything except that group is voluntary. In that case, you can apply such notions because everyone is free to disassociate with that entity, with that association. So people can share guilt, they can voluntarily share guilt, and they can disassociate from an association when they don't want to share that guilt anymore. But somehow that guilt might be tied up to something that they want to have, so they might still associate with it. That makes sense to some extent, but it makes no sense whatsoever to say that red-headed people are guilty of something, or owe something to someone else, or some other group. That makes no sense whatsoever. There is no team badge between red-headed people, or black people, or white people, or large or small people. It makes no sense whatsoever. And people who believe that are what I would have thought are called racist scumbags, and that is something that Shirley Sherrod obviously is. And for me, it doesn't matter that there is a larger narrative in the video. It doesn't matter at all, because she obviously still thinks in those categories. She just thinks that his kind, the white farmer's kind, is also a victim if they're poor. But to me, that is relatively irrelevant. It is also relatively irrelevant whether she actually helped him or not. It is also irrelevant that her father was killed by a white man. It is irrelevant to the question whether or not she is a racist. In the same sense that it is, for example, irrelevant whether a white supremacist has suffered wrongs at the hands of a criminal black youth gang in high school, which is not too far-fetched, is it? No one would say, oh well, you have to understand why he's a racist scumbag because there were some pretty ugly black youths he had to deal with in high school. No one would say such a thing, and righteously so. It doesn't matter at all what you have suffered from in the past by a group of people defined by skin color. That is no justification for thinking in those terms morally. I want to give some examples of that. For example, if I was to help two arbitrary people, say Tim Wise and a black person I don't know, I would help the black person I don't know, because I know I don't like Tim Wise and I know nothing about the black person. Or let's say Hirsi Ali and a random white person I don't know, then I would help Hirsi Ali, because I know I approve of her. I know she's a hero. And I know nothing about the white person. See? There is no shred of that thinking in me. I am not a racist. Now, how come that people believe that Shirley Sherrod was a victim of a fraud, that she was framed? How come? It is that some liberals actually believe that there is such a thing as terms like guilt being applicable to a group of people defined by skin color, the whites. There is a larger narrative, and that is that whites have wronged black people in the past. And when they then see the Shirley Sherrod video and have to judge it, they see her biography. They see that her father was killed by a white guy and the murderer being acquitted by an all-white jury, and that fits into this narrative of white people having wronged black people. And that is why the observer of that video then can't judge, can't condemn Shirley Sherrod for what she really is, a racist. Her language of his kind, thinking in these categories, just goes out of the window, because it would mean that you have to condemn her, and you don't want that. And that is how the media bias comes about. I'm German, and I learn about American media only about the internet. I've read about Breitbart's death in the German media, and the Shirley Sherrod case was mentioned, and that was Spiegel Online, by the way, and she was called completely innocent and framed. And if it wasn't for the internet, I could have not seen the video. And I would have thought that a government, a public service employee, would have been framed and would have been completely innocent. And that was the story I was told. It's a completely different story than this video shows. That is media bias. And that was what Andrew Breitbart was fighting against.
The left controls the cultural narrative, and I call it the Democrat media complex in the book. It's the natural alliance of the Democratic Party, liberal organizations, liberal interest groups, and the mainstream media, and how they work to frame the cultural narrative, which veers the country, which is center-right, to the left by way of cultural channels. And so if you control the narrative, if you control ABC, CBS, NBC, if you control New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, the music industry, everything, you are able to frame the political debate as such. You're a liberal, you want to save the world. You're a liberal, you're for the children, you're for the environment, you're for clean water, you're for everything. Everything is framed in a way that if you're liberal, you're for that which is good. And it sets up conservatives as being basically evil. And that's what the media does. They basically say, well, who are those people that are protesting? They certainly can't be for the children because they're not liberal. They certainly can't be for the environment because they're not liberal. What are they? And so the media frames the Tea Party as racist, sexist, homophobe, as a means to tell people who may feel like them, well, if you join that gathering, you're going to be called a racist. You're going to be called a fascist. You're going to be made fun of. And so I'm basically saying that Katie Couric deserved to lose her job, and the American people have been saying through talk radio and through the people's medium, the internet, for the last 15 years, and through talk radio over the last 23 years, have been telling the mainstream media, get your act together.